Why is 6 days something that you're stuck on? Why does it have to be for you 6 days of creation?
Well,
Let me ask that.
It's one of the first bits in the Bible, and you can't take it at face value. If you can take that at face value, or if you're supposed to, that's a problem, because science doesn't support that. But if you're not supposed to take that at face value, can you take the flood at face value? Can you take David killing Goliath with a stone at face value? Can you take Jonah being swallowed by a whale at face value? Can you take Balaam's donkey talking to him at face value? Can you take there being a literal Adam and Eve at face value? You see what I mean? It's like it opens the door to whatever the heck you want. Whatever you want, and it doesn't really matter. You can take whatever you want at face value. As far as those kinds of stories, you know? Did God really speak to Job out of a whirlwind? Did Elijah really flip up into the air in a fiery chariot and go up into heaven? Did Jesus really come back from the dead, or is that figurative? You see the problem?
Welcome to the 42 Podcast, where we discuss life together, looking for answers to life, the universe, and, well, everything else. Here are your hosts, Rob and Lindsay. Oh, record scratch. Alright, real quick. Here are not your hosts, Rob and Lindsay. It's just Rob at the moment. And I wanted to take a moment and say, hey, scheduling stuff came up. This episode is up, but we're not going to have an episode next week, just so you know. So, this episode, scheduling conflicts, couldn't get a chance to record. We'll be back in 2 weeks. Alright, enough of me. Here's more of us. Starting here, good morning.
Good morning. Happy Saturday to ya.
It is Saturday.
I've had a lovely morning with the kiddos. I got some time to myself. I got copious amounts of toast for people. I played in the playroom with the dog and some children. And yeah, it's just been a nice leisurely morning. We don't have much to do today except for some chores and stuff, so it's just nice to not have too much to do, not have anywhere to go unless we want to. That doesn't happen often.
Speaking of dogs, mine is down here with me, sitting on my lap while I'm podcasting. He's a little angry at me, because normally I sit upstairs and he and I have a cup of coffee and, you know, I pet him and he just lays there like, yes, this is my morning, this is what I want. It's the morning routine.
How does he take his coffee?
He takes it however I drink it, and then demands all the pets and cuddles. So, but no, he's sitting down here with me because he's a little bit mad I didn't do the morning routine this morning. So he's demanding it now. He's a good boy.
He needs his oxytocin dose.
Yeah. Alright, out of what you were saying, I have a question. What is the topping of choice for toast in your house?
Lately it's been cinnamon and sugar and butter.
Oh my gosh.
Cinnamon, sugar, butter. But if I can get them to peanut butter and butter, I'm trying to cut back on the dairy. I'm trying to not have any dairy if I can help it. But I like, so just peanut butter and some blackberry jelly I've been having, and that's really good. For some reason, jelly and peanut butter on toast is a completely different animal than a peanut butter jelly sandwich. And I would never have believed that if somebody told me, but it's true. Something about it being warm is just different and crunchy instead of squishy and sticking to your teeth.
All right, so I have one more question on that. You said that the topping of choice right now is cinnamon, sugar, butter. Now, is that the cinnamon and sugar mixed in with the butter, or is it you put the butter on top and then you sprinkle the cinnamon and sugar on top?
Yeah, you scrape you scrape the butter on, and then do a little sprinkle of sugar and some dashes of cinnamon.
All right. So this is an argument in my house. And I have effectively lost ground. I get it. For Melinda growing up, cinnamon sugar toast was that. You put the butter on, then you sprinkle on some cinnamon and sugar. Mm-hmm. And that's how even the kids like it. For me growing up, my mother would do this thing where she would mix the cinnamon and sugar in with the butter, and then put that on top of a piece of bread, and then stick it in the broiler until the cinnamon sugar butter mix had melted and it candied on top of the bread.
That sounds good.
And then it was a bit of a production, but to me, that's cinnamon sugar toast.
You're worth it. Mommy said.
I think that's a better way to do it, but I have been in trouble in the past for that, so yeah.
It's much easier. I definitely wouldn't do that for my kids. No. Because I don't really want them to have cinnamon sugar toast. I'd rather them have peanut butter toast because they stay full longer and it doesn't burn through their system like a lit match, but at least they're eating something.
See, I don't do it that way all the time, but like a Saturday morning, if that's something they want, I'll do it. Mm-hmm. School day, no, you're on your own. There's food. There's plenty of breakfast food, so eat what you want. Mm-hmm. Okay. Look at that. That was random. It was a nice random moment with memories.
Kind of like a rabbit trail.
Or a drunk squirrel. Sorry, it's... I say rabbit trail almost every episode. Mm-hmm. I've been trying to stop.
Yep.
Trying. And there you are, just trying to tempt me right back to it.
But then Drunken Squirrel it's very illustrative. It really paints a picture in your head.
Squirrel.
I was thinking of the squirrel deciding which way, they try to cross the road and they can't figure out which way to go. They're just like, eat,
oh, yeah.
Eat.
All right. Enough of that drunken squirrel.
Enough of that drunken
coffee.
Squirrel. That's quotable.
Anyway, we do have some intention with our conversation this morning.
We do.
And you wanted to have a preamble conversation, which makes me feel like I'm already getting taken back to the woodshed.
No.
What did I do, Lindsay? What did I do?
You didn't do anything. I know we talked about it already via text. Because I've been editing last week's episode, and we attempt to talk about the difference between theology and philosophy, and we're just like not quite connecting. And it was a good conversation because we haven't really done that in a while. I haven't yelled at you in quite some time.
Right. Let's also address what happened at the beginning of the episode, the cold open that you set up. And my poetry riff.
Yes, you're like, Lindsay, hasn't poetry ever moved you? Yes, Rob, it's moved me. Listen to this. And then you proceed to read me a poem. A very good poem. And in my passive-aggressive...
Lindsay-ish.
Lindsay-ishness, I set it to music, and so have you doing this cool little, poetry riff. And
now, you texted that to me midweek this week, and I didn't respond for an hour. I was in the middle of doing a thing with a parent, and it's one of those work conversations that is intense. So, I get out of that, and I'm like, I needed to figure out how to decompress and laugh. And I look at my phone, I'm like, oh no, what is this? I had forgotten I read that poem last week, so I open it up, and I just started cracking up in the middle of the church as I'm listening to this.
Good.
So, yes, Good. Thank you. I needed that.
Yeah.
I know I can be weird.
You're not weird. You're not weird.
No, I'm weird. I'm weird.
If you're weird, then everybody's weird. You're just really different. See, you're really different.
But that's just it. Everybody is weird in their own unique, wonderful beauty. See, I'm doing it again. Everybody's weird, and that's okay.
Anyway, I'm not there's nothing wrong with you being you. It's just you're very different than me, which is, I think, part of what makes us miss each other or not connect during conversations sometimes, especially heated ones, or ones in which we are trying to get from point A to point G or whatever it is systematically. Systematic conversations you do not seem to love. And
I have to actually take a step back with some of the systematic conversations that we have that you want, and I have to reframe how I think. I'm not a linear thinker. I've never been someone who thinks in a linear fashion. I do the circular thing. You know, A, jump around to C, go to F. Are you drawing a circle? I'm not a squiggle.
That's what some of the conversations feel like that we have, and I don't know how to handle it.
I am not a squiggle.
You're not a squiggle. You're a ball of yarn. You're a plate of spaghetti.
I am a circular thinker. I don't do well with linear, and I have to pull myself back and reframe how I think. Yep. But that was also the beauty, superpower, really, of what I had with my seminary papers, where it was, okay, with how I think, I can write in a way that it draws you into the paper. So I had fun with that.
Yeah. You like taking people for a ride.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you do.
Still do.
You like taking people for a ride. I want to arrive at the destination. You're like, ooh, pretty flowers.
But that's part of the journey of life. Okay, let's...
And I'm like, well, what do these flowers have to do with that stop that we're trying to get to? I don't understand the flowers. I want to get to the next stop. I want to establish this point. And to me, what you say doesn't help me get there. It just sort of confuses me sometimes. And
so you know what's funny? In real life, when I car trip anywhere, I don't do this. I'm not like, ooh, pretty flower. No, let's go. As fast as we can. One straight shot. Let's do it. But otherwise, yeah, let's go for a ride. Let's see the flowers. Pretty.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. I am insane. I know.
You're not insane. You're just, that's why we miss each other. Because I want something out of the conversation. Or I want to get here, and you don't have that. You don't do that. You don't need to. Which is fine. But anyway, that's why the conversations go the way they do sometimes, I think, and why I get frustrated. Not that not that it's something we need to fix. I just think it's something we need to be aware of. I need to be aware of, and I think maybe the audience has probably already picked up on this, maybe, but we are very different, and that's okay. But it doesn't. But we're not gonna have a straight shooting debate. There's no possible way we can. Exactly. So I kind of need to stop expecting that. But we're going to have an interesting conversation, and we'll go where we go. In drunken squirrel fashion.
You don't want to use rabbit trail there? All right. So go ahead and start setting up the premise and a bit of what you were thinking.
Okay. Essentially, I struggle with faith. I struggle with some of the things in the Bible. Actually, hold on. I'll edit this week because this is going to be an annoying week to edit. All right, let me pull up the email that I sent you because I did it really concisely there. I said it concisely there. We were talking about proof, and you asked what kind of proof I was looking for, right? Something like that?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, this is what proof looks like to me. The Bible makes a lot of historical and scientific assertions and claims. I do not contest the crazy stuff like the virgin birth or miracles, because to me that is secondary. If the basic historical scientific facts can be verified as true, then it is 90% easier to leap to the rest being true. So, to me, because I feel unsure and I struggle with believing some of the grand claims of Christianity, to me, a common sense place to start is the basic historical or scientific claims. And not so much scientific claims, because people argue, well, it's not a scientific text. Even though it does make scientific claims, you could argue that, I don't know, it was written so long ago, it's not supposed to be literal or something. But the historical claims, like who was king when, who was governor, cities, like the conquest of Canaan, the Exodus, what certain kings did, censuses that were taken, those are very basic historical claims. The flood, even though that's like, to me, that's a cross between historical and scientific, because other nations would have records of a flood. Anyway, those things should all be able to be verified. Mm-hmm. And when they can't be, or when there's a super amount of contention, debate about whether certain things were true, it makes me question the rest of it. If the basics are questionable, where the Bible came from, why certain parts of Mark are totally not even in the original manuscripts, but we still quote them and teach from them, things like, if that stuff can't be easily explained, then how can things like the virgin birth or other things be expected to be believed? So that's where I struggle. And to me, it should be an easy go-to to find some kind of rest. Okay, God made these claims, so I'm going to read about the earth. I'm going to read, then, I don't know. So that's my struggle. That's where I'm coming from right now.
Okay. So, can I ask, because one of the things you said in there, and I'll try and stay in an order, but the scientific claims that you've said about, that Scripture makes, can you give me an example?
The flood's a really good one. A worldwide flood is a really good one.
Okay.
Creation being created in 6 days is a really good one.
Okay.
Whether we came from nothing or something, how we came here, how we got here, is a good one.
Okay. So, let's just stick with the claims of creation and the flood first. Mm-hmm. And you and I have had some conversations on this in the past. And for me, the claim that creation was made in a true literal 6 days, I don't find it impossible, but I find it improbable. Why is 6 days something that you're stuck on? Why does it have to be for you 6 days of creation?
Well,
Let me ask that.
It's one of the first bits in the Bible, and you can't take it at face value. If you can take that at face value, or if you're supposed to, that's a problem, because science doesn't support that. But if you're not supposed to take that at face value, can you take the flood at face value? Can you take David killing Goliath with a stone at face value? Can you take Jonah being swallowed by a whale at face value? Can you take Balaam's donkey talking to him at face value? Can you take there being a literal Adam and Eve at face value? You see what I mean? It's like it opens the door to whatever the heck you want. Whatever you want, and it doesn't really matter, which kind of in a way makes my job easier, kind of, but not really. Because you can just believe whatever you want. You can take whatever you want at face value. As far as those kinds of stories, Did God really speak to Job out of a whirlwind? Did Elijah really flip up into the air in a fiery chariot and go up into heaven? Did Jesus really come back from the dead? Or is that figurative? You see the problem?
Yeah, but I don't think it's the same problem that you see. you're saying that because we can't take this at face value, we can't say it was truly 6 literal days. It undermines everything.
That's what I'm saying.
That's what you're saying.
Right.
And I think that's a problem.
You think what I'm saying is a problem?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It is a problem.
But not the problem you're thinking it is.
What am I think? What is it? The problem then? To what is you the problem?
Well, why is it we have to die on this hill that if at the beginning of Scripture it's not a literal 6 days, everything else is undermined?
Because it's the beginning of the book. If I'm gonna build a crib in my room, if I'm gonna build a crib for my kid, and I get the first 2 steps of directions wrong, the whole thing's gonna be inside out, and then I'm gonna have to take it apart and put it back together again. It's not gonna make any sense. It's not gonna work. So it's the same line of logic.
But not all of Scripture is built in that vein of literal. And not all of Scripture should be taken as literal.
But you get to pick which ones. To me, the parts you don't take literal in the scripture, as far as it talks about itself, contained in the scripture, Jesus says, this is a parable, this is a story. You're not supposed to take it literally. Possibly in the prophets, when he says, this is a vision, or this is what I saw, are you supposed to take that literally? I would say not, because it's kind of in the realm of poetry. I don't think you're supposed to take poetry or prophecy literally, necessarily. So, unless it says, this is something you're supposed to not take literally, or this is a story, everything else, you get to decide if it's literal or not. Give me an example otherwise.
Give you an example? It's through study, okay? We got to look at who the author is. So, who do we hold traditionally as the author of Genesis?
Why does that... Okay, who?
Moses.
And?
Moses.
And what does that have to do with whether you're supposed to take it literally or not?
Okay, well, if we understand who Moses is within the context of those first 5 books, who he represented, which is God and the people, and we understand that he was creating what is the context for the establishment of the Israelites. Those first 5 books are the establishment story of Israel. It's the laws, it's the legends that they've had. Mm-hmm. It's fair for us to look and say, okay, there is variety between these books. Genesis has elements of prehistory, oral storytelling, poetry, and some elements of later history leading into Exodus.
So how do you tell them apart?
You have to look at the sections. You have to study the chapter.
You're kind of appealing to secret knowledge. You're appealing to authority and assuming I don't have the knowledge. But I've read it upside down. I understand.
I'm not appealing to secret knowledge.
No, you're appealing, but you're appealing to the fact that you're assuming I don't know, or that the regular people don't know, or
don't know what.
How do you know? You have to study. Well, okay, but I need examples. You're saying you have to go do the work yourself. Well, no, I want you to tell me.
You want me to tell you what?
How do you know the difference in Genesis between prehistory, and you used the word history, which is something that actually happened, prehistory, story, law. Law, obviously, you can tell because it's like do not do this, do not do that. So that's easy to see. But as far as story and prehistory, how are you going to tell the difference between the two things? And also, why does that mean you don't take the story literally? Because you can take that. I could tell you a story about D-Day in Normandy. I could tell you a story, and you don't know if it's true or not until I give you dates and I verify things. It's just a story, right? You don't know.
The part that I would say is the transition from prehistory to history, okay, is, I would say right about chapter 36 in Genesis.
36?
Yeah. I mean, you could probably say it goes back a little bit further, but I would say you can go right in there to 36. Because 36 brings you to the age of Joseph. It brings you to pre-exile.
before Genesis 36, you are saying is not literal, not historical.
I didn't say... I would say is prehistory.
Okay, that's not really what I'm asking. That's not what I meant.
I'm using prehistory as a definition of what happened in a time and place that is the oral storytelling tradition further back. So when you get to 36, you're transitioning into Joseph going to Egypt, the whole Technicolor Dreamcoat. That's how I always think of that. And then the enslavement of the Israelites. That's where it leaves you. Not the enslavement of the Israelites, but it leaves you with them in Egypt post-famine. So 36 leads you into Joseph. And that's why I say that before that you have prehistory. And
does prehistory mean you're not supposed to... How does that follow?
Prehistory means that you're still doing the same thing with 36 and beyond, but it's the oral storytelling tradition. And being accurate and telling a story was important. I mean, that's how you learned, that's how you passed on tradition, that's how you passed on wisdom and knowledge, is you would tell a story, and then whoever you were training up to be the next storyteller of that story had to be able to get it right.
So what happens between 35 and 36 that makes it different? How does it change?
It's the age you're going into, because now you're going into Joseph, into Jacob's line right before Exodus, and Exodus is a book that's claiming to have history. God's history with the Israelites in Egypt, taking them out of Egypt.
But Jacob arriving in Padan Aram isn't history. Or Jacob is running away from Laban, that's not history, that's just oral tradition. See, I'm confused. You're confusing me. I don't get the difference between Jacob fleeing from Laban and Joseph sold by his brothers.
I gave an arbitrary point saying that here's where I think you're going from prehistory to something that can be tracked a little bit better with the historical. I guess you can also go back and track those as well. But I'm saying transitioning, here's where there's a big element of history that is the oral tradition moving into Exodus, which is moving past the prehistories, getting us to Exodus.
So that's the point where there might be actual historical evidence that Joseph existed, you mean? Like before then, it's just oral tradition, we have no evidence, but after prehistory, there are events that could plausibly be some kind of archaeological evidence or something. Is that the difference between prehistory and history? Prehistory we don't know exactly, except by oral tradition and what other nations say about you. Sort of, if it's documented. And then after, its history is documented. Better documented with archaeology or what have you. Is that the difference? I'm not trying to pick a fight. I just want to understand.
Yeah, I mean, you could make that as a good argument. I chose something arbitrary because I haven't brushed up on this for a while. So part of that is my arbitrary, okay, here's where there's a transition transition taking us into the time of exile and what is the history of Exodus, where Exodus is making a historic claim and Genesis is a mixed bag. It really is. You're staring at me entirely dissatisfied.
No, I'm just trying to think through the implications of what you're saying.
Okay, well, think of Genesis. Genesis is saying that it makes a big claim in the beginning. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth.
Right.
Nothing was formed. Nothing was made. Okay?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's a big claim.
Yes.
And then it lays out 2 chapters on how creation was made. And there is an argument that this is an oral tradition that was handed down and that Moses finally wrote down. And we have to remember, we're dealing with an ancient people who, if we hold, started with Adam and Eve and then progress to the time period at the end of Genesis, written language wasn't a thing that they had. Or if they did have, we've lost all elements of it.
Right. That's a big deal.
Yeah. So these stories then become oral stories. They become passed down generation to generation until someone figures out written language and writes it down.
So in a way, I can't believe we take it seriously, then. If no one could even write it down till like 700 BC, or whatever it was, 700 BC? 7,000 BC? 7,000 BC?
Lindsay, I'm going to use a personal example. I know you hate it when I do this, but it's the only thing I have as a personal example. You were there for your children's birth, right?
Yes, I was there.
And your children were too, right?
Yeah.
Did they remember it? Fine little details? What the weather was? The moment you're like, oh, I'm about to be a mother and hold a child. Do they remember any of that?
I don't like it when you ask me those stupid questions. I don't like that. You
How's
tell me.
How's it a stupid question?
Because it's a leading question. Like, there's only one answer. And I don't like
What's the
that.
answer?
It makes me feel stupid.
Yeah, it's fine. I ask entrapping questions. You're right.
So anyway, what's your point?
My point is you told your children about how they were born. The details, the highlights of the stories that we've told Ray and Addie. Ray was born, and like a day later, a blizzard set in. Addie was born, and a day later, a huge hailstorm set in. So we tell them stories like that and joke about it of, oh, you guys were forces of nature, you know. Addie was a thunderstorm, Ray's a snowstorm. We tell them about how, you know, Addie, we almost lost her when she was born. So we tell her about that and how precious she is. But admittedly, we've never gone and written down what our oral stories to our family, to our kids. We never transitioned to that. And that would be the argument that I have for Genesis is, I mean, we're dealing with a prehistoric people. We're dealing with the forming of language. Genesis even makes a claim on the forming of language. And those are big deals in understanding what the narrative of Scripture is. And that narrative, I don't think, is broken by a claim of God created in 6 days. And I've shared with you in the past what my justification for that is. Where I do think Moses had the oral story that God created. But I think in the time periods where he was up on Mount Sinai, he may have also been given a vision to what that creation was. And in my mind, and it's all speculative, but in my mind, for Moses, that may very well have played out in the 6-day period. But I also understand that that answer is speculative and requires an answer that I can't verify this side of heaven.
So in the New Testament, at least things were written down eventually. And then those writings were passed around and those writings were copied. But wait, what you're saying is that nobody had written anything down for millennia. And those stories were passed down perfectly. But that's not how memory works. That's not how humans work. That's not how our rationality works. That's not how politics works. So, if nobody wrote things down until King Josiah, maybe? That's the name. I can't back it up with a source, but I read that Josiah was the one to really write down the law after it had been lost for a long time. That he's the one who wrote. Yeah, but I read he actually he had it written down. He had it, but...
I know what you're talking about now.
But anyway, if it took that long, also Josiah's a king with a political agenda. He wants to take everything back and give Israel an identity. And bonus, Hear, O Israel, the Lord thy God is one God. Hayah. So
okay, it is Josiah. It's 2 Kings chapter 22 in the book of the law, found. And the claim is that he found it in the temple. And where are we at? 2 Kings. So this is...
Look at this book I just happened to find.
But things were written down before then. This is in the exilic periods, in the history and turmoils, that there's turnover, there's loyalty and faithfulness to God, moving away from God, loyalty and faithfulness to God. So you can't just dismiss the claim as he's making something up, and at this point in history, now we get old. That's a big leap.
But still, the amount of time that's gone by. The amount of time that's gone by. Would you believe a story that you heard passed down 7,000 years before? 4,000 years before? 1,000 years before? Would you take it as gospel? I'm just saying, that's kind of hard to believe.
And yet I do. I have written words that I believe. I've not had first-hand encounters with the history claims or I've had first-hand encounters with the spiritual side and the claims that is God, but not of the history or, as you've said, science. But I believe that there's something to those stories that's not just of value, but that's real. I hold that God is the creator of the universe. If he created it in a literal 6 days, or if he created in a 6 billion year time period, compressed it down, and showed Moses the highlight reel. Hey, look, ta-da! I believe that God created, so the creation story is of value because it shows that he did. But the exact mechanism of it, I think that's better answered by science. And you know what? I think there's beauty in that because God is a God who builds boundaries, laws, order, and science gives answer to that. It shows those laws, boundaries, and borders in magnificent and fascinating ways. It's this, if you jump up in the air, you fall back down, right? Gravity.
Mm-hmm.
Horrifyingly, Isaac Newton, it was Newton, right?
Mm-hmm.
Began to explain, examine, and codify what was gravity and what was the church's reaction.
You tell me.
Nope, we're done with you. We're excommunicating you. You are a heretic.
Yeah, well, without looking at the articles, yeah, that's what it looks like. At least that his theory of gravity shook the church's confidence because they thought God kept people on the planet Earth, not gravity, and that shook their confidence.
And if I remember correctly, Isaac Newton had some form of belief in God.
Yeah, he did.
And to him, he discovered the means, the law that God used to create that system, not seeking to undermine it. And this is a guy that we credit in school with, hey, an apple fell on his head, and gravity, yay.
Mm-hmm.
But the church's reaction has always been horrifyingly negative to science. And I get it, because there's an element of we want to attribute and credit everything to God. Science wants to look at and understand, well, okay, gravity's a thing because rotation, magnetic something in the Earth's core and the sun and mass.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That doesn't undermine my faith, Annie. Just, okay, cool. There's a system in the universe that literally holds the universe together.
So is God gravity?
Well, again, science, the Higgs boson particle, the God particle. I wouldn't say God is... Wait, did you say is God gravity?
Or light.
Is that what you said?
Or sound.
I think God is more than all of that.
To what extent are you animistic? Is that what it is? God is in everything.
Yeah.
Therefore nothing.
See, I'm trying not to go on poetically here. I'm trying to be very linear. Stop tempting me.
God can't be in everything because then God is in nothing. Because then there is no God. He can't be in everything. He can't be in everything. He can't be everything. That's like saying everybody's special. Everybody's super.
Wait a minute. We just started the podcast with how everyone's weird, that's magnificent, and wonderful.
Everybody's unique, but that doesn't... I don't know. I'm lost.
Maybe the better way to put it is God's fingerprints are on everything. To me, I don't... And I get it. I had to arrive at this point, and it took time to get there. But I don't see an undermining of my faith. Because...
What about... So you've found a place for that to sit. For you... Genesis is for you is squared away. There's no contradiction between science and the Bible.
There are questions.
Mm-hmm.
There are, and I think science has, or will get closer to those answers this side of heaven than I can theologically on how or why or what that even looks like for this to work.
So eventually the answers will come for you. Eventually,
either
things will be sorted out because it can't not be true. It can't.
Oh, it can be not true.
What cannot be true? What cannot be true? What are you saying? What do you think I'm saying?
Scripture can be not true.
In what capacity, Robert?
Your eyes got really big on that statement.
Yeah, you love it. Now, what capacity?
In the capacity that, in theory, I am wrong. We talked about this a bit last week, where, there's Pascal's wager. If I'm wrong and I live my life to the ideals of Christianity, trying to love, serve, and glorify God by loving my neighbor and caring for people in His creation, even if I'm wrong, I won't feel like I've wasted my life. I think it is of value to look at people through the lens of love that is greater than me. And if I'm right, then I will have lived a life that serves something greater and higher than I can understand this side of heaven.
I'm trying to wrap my brain
around that. Your lip is twitching.
I'm trying to wrap my brain around that.
Around which part of that?
Around if that's faith or not. Are you believing in it or not? Or are you just living a cool life and whatever is right is right? If it's right, it's right. If it's not right...
Okay, do you want me to be linear or squiggly?
I don't want you to
I'm trying to be linear in a way and not wax poetically about faith.
No, I don't want you to wax poetically about faith, but if the position you hold is I could be wrong or I could be right, either way, we're gonna...
Okay. Does this help? I am at 99.9, little line on top, infinite. I truly don't think I'm wrong. Okay? But I cannot eliminate that little bit of doubt that says I could be wrong. And I am also not the creator of the universe, so I'm not going to look and assume I am right 10,000%.
If you're wrong, I think it does matter if it's right or wrong. Because if it's wrong, hold on. If it's right, then okay, millennia of the church messing up is slightly justified because at least there's a heaven.
No,
listen to me. Wait. Listen to me. At least there's a heaven. So the church screwed up. Christians have screwed up all this time. Or whatever. It's been terrible. But at least there's a heaven. So they were kind of right. Even through the Inquisitions and against the Salem witch trials and all the bad things that happened, at least there's still a heaven. But if there is no God, then it's not justified in the slightest at all. There isn't even a heaven, so it doesn't even matter. So all that pain and death was for nothing.
Okay, all that pain and death was for nothing. There is no way the church can justify.
I didn't say it was justified, but at least those people that were tortured went to a heaven. At least those people, that's what I'm saying, at least those people that the bad things that happened are at least there's an upside, because when you die, at least you get to go to heaven. But if there is no God, all of that pain was for nothing. All the martyrs that died for nothing. You see what I'm saying? So it does matter if it's true or not, because it changes history. It changes how you see history, and it changes how you see now, and it changes how you see the future.
Okay, I'm not following.
You're saying that it doesn't matter, really. It might not be true. But what do I have to lose? I mean, and I know you're saying 99.9% sure it is true, but to me it does matter if it's true or not.
Right.
Because...
Okay, it does matter if it's true.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm at a position in life where I have said, I believe in this in such a way that I have dedicated my whole life to this.
Mm-hmm.
This is my career, my family. This is the depth of belief that I have in this is everything about who I am. And that matters. If tomorrow, somehow, irrefutably, there is the statement that God does not exist, I lose everything. Sorry, if tomorrow the evidence that God does not exist happens, irrefutably, I lose everything. And I understand that. But this scripture, sorry, I'm tapping the Bible on my end, the claims it makes, the character that is revealed in the narrative of scripture of God, it makes sense. I've encountered something that is of a supernatural element in my belief, in my walk, and in my journey, that this makes sense. And I know there are some big claims in this. I know that there are I know there are elements of reconciliation between what is known and what is unknown, how this book came to be. I get that. I've had to walk through those. Shoot, I mean, I don't remember which class it was. But it was one of the early ones. We had to sit down and have that argument, which was fascinating and fun. I miss seminary sometimes. Sometimes I don't. So it matters to me. Even the history that is the church 500, 1,000, 1,500 years ago, it matters. First and foremost, because in some of those horrible, dark times, I think the church was broken and corrupted by evil men. But I think the beauty of the church is that you can't stop what is Christ. You can't stop what is faith and hope and love as it's seen in the person of Jesus Christ, as it's seen in the New Testament, as it's seen in this narrative that is God redeeming a broken people. And that out of those different time periods when the church breaks, there's always a return that happens. There's always I wanted to use a voice calling in the wilderness. And then I started debating, can I use that with John the Baptist because of John? But we'll call it a voice in the wilderness. Mm-hmm. You have Martin Luther, who nails the 95 Theses to the door. You have the divisions of the church, the monasteries that rose up, the fight, the two popes fight. Oh my gosh, did you ever read any of the history with the two popes? Basically, it was effectively two different kingdoms. I think it was France and someone else, and there was a division, their politics, and I'll have to brush up on it. But you have these moments where the broken nature of the heart of the church is revealed in a political sense or in a power sense or. And it matters because then you see God move in a way that is, the church is Scripture, is the embodiment of what it is to be the love of Christ manifest in the world today, come out of those times. And the church has not always done well with looking and saying, hey, we screwed that up. The Catholic Church has not done well with that. The Episcopalian Anglican Church has not done well with that. Hey, we're a church formed because Henry VIII wanted a divorce 5 times. And he might have lopped a few of his wife's head off for kicks and giggles. There are horrifying things that we will always find to do, and we will use religion, we will use faith, we will use science to weaponize hate, ineptitude, disdain, and division. So I look at that and it does matter. It matters because faith, religion has been used as a weapon to oppress, to hurt, and that's not what it's supposed to be. People will do horrifying things in the name of God. And I've experienced and I've seen that today. And it bothers me. Shoot, I mean, just going back to the conversations we had with Jesus and John Wayne. That stuff breaks my heart because it does nothing but hurt and kill and break people. Look at that, it made me wax poetically. I know that wasn't a finite set of answers like you're looking for. I know it wasn't a linear, here are the evidences and the proofs. And I'm not trying to make any kind of appeal to a secret knowledge. I do believe, and I really do believe this, that there are those elements of Scripture that make us go, wait a minute, that's a big claim. And I think they're there because they're meant to make us want to go deeper, want to ask more questions, want to understand the world and the nature of God. That drives us to a curiosity, that drives us to a question. I don't think God made this world for it to be static and exist in a manner that was, yay, ta-da. I think He made it in a way that He wanted us to discover it, to grow into it, to, discover gravity, discover the sun, the galaxy, the. And that's what I see with Scripture. That's what I see with some of those big questions. I don't have perfect, finite answers, but I have these bits that, hey, I think Genesis 1 and 2 are incredible stories that are there to show that God's presence was in the beginning of creation. Whether it's a literal 6 days or not, God's presence was there. And we're understanding it dimly because, we're monkeys with half a brain trying to understand a marvelously vast God.
Can I comment on? So you're being wonderful. You're making sense. But that last thing you said
I said it intentionally.
Is what I like to call the Christian escape hatch.
How so?
The Christian escape hatch to any question, any debate that doesn't make sense, any doubts or problems is God is transcendent, omniscient, omnipotent, and all-loving. Humans are not transcendent, omniscient, omnipotent, or all-loving. Therefore, there are things we cannot know, cannot see, cannot understand in the plan of God. So that's why you don't understand. That's why we don't understand evil. That's why we don't understand creation. That's why we don't understand the problem of evil. That's why we don't understand all that stuff. Your answer ultimately is you're a monkey with half a brain. So how can you understand God? That's the ultimate escape hatch.
So wait a minute. You want me to justify God's existence without making an appeal to vastly who he is?
No, you're saying
and the broken nature
you're saying we
of
can't,
who we are.
You're saying we can't understand. We can't understand because we're monkeys with half a brain.
I'm saying that we cannot perfectly understand now. We can get glimpses. We can get bits of answers that lead us to bigger questions and greater journeys and questions. But
the
end of the day, faith has to be filled in spots. And yeah, I do have to make an appeal that I am a broken creation trying to understand a perfect God.
Well, that's your way out of every problem. So okay, so as a Christian, I'm trying to be a Christian, but when I come to problems, that's where you turn your brain off. That's the part where you have to turn your brain off. Because God.
Okay, hold on. Where have I turned my brain off?
You're not in any specific way except to say, basically, well, you kind of are, because you're not it's not like you're being dumb. It's that you're saying, I can't know. We can't know. So any lacking in the evidence or any contradictions that happen in scripture or any question about, is this literal, is this not literal? At the end of the day, we can't know because we're just people. So any arguments you build, that's like it gets the carpet gets swept out from under you because that's the end of the argument. That's like the conversation ender. And it's not your fault. I think it's not, you're not being bad. It's not your fault. It's how we're trained from infancy, from childhood.
Okay. Hold on. So, what is wrong with the statement that is, I can't know everything?
Nothing. Because a scientist can't know anything either, but at least with science, things are falsifiable. So, you have a way, more evidence, more, it's not ever, that's the end, we can't know. We can't know until we die and go to heaven. That's not an answer.
Okay. And I'm saying there are elements of this that I won't know, and I don't think I ever will know this side of heaven, because I don't think that'll be part of my journey.
Yeah, but we're talking about things like in history or science. We're that's what we were talking about originally was
right.
Who was the governor in Israel when Jesus was born, or
but here's the thing:
like
I'm
that.
not, and I'm speaking to me where it's okay. I'm not actively out there in the Middle East chasing these things down. I'm not an archaeologist looking for these things, so I'm not going to know. And even if they do find it, archaeological discoveries take, 5 to 10 years to be verified?
Okay.
What was that?
I don't know.
I'm looking to where I'm at and going, I'm okay with saying I may not get these answers. I may not know this side of heaven. And I'm okay with that. Having a bit of a mystery, that's okay. And yeah, I do, at the end of the day, need to make an appeal to that, because that is a very important piece of faith. That there's a God who knows and has created all, and that he has a plan that is of the eternal perspective that's beyond me. And just to aggravatingly put one more nail into the conversation, I think in the grand scheme of things, Christianity has shown that, if you will, in the grand experiment, faith in God has a repeatability, has a habit over 2,000 years of Christianity to not going away. That experiment, sociologically, it keeps coming up. It keeps having a similar result of producing people who genuinely love and care for people, for the world, for the whole creation.
It's not the same thing as being Christian. Anybody can do that. There's lots of people that love the world. That doesn't mean they're a Christian. You're talking really specifically, and then you get super broad.
I'm talking about people within the church. I'm not saying the world, oh look, we can love as a world. I think that's ingrained in our heart. Yes, we're all capable of love. I think the greater you pull on that string, the closer it takes you to God.
That's a good way to say that, actually.
And I believe that within the church, within faith, there is always going to be this element of it taking you to God. That the church is seeking to draw that out from people, from creation, and reveal God. So in that, I think there's repeatability in the experiment. I think we can look back and see in history that there is a thing that is continuing to happen, even when, going back to those horrible times, even when the church is truly failing, something happens. And the church doesn't go away because it's a thing of power for 2,000 years. Why are there no monarchies that are 2,000 years old? They change. Even the current house of England. I'm forgetting which house they are.
Windsor?
Is it Windsor?
I think so.
It changes with time. And the church has gone through change, but the core element of it is still there.
Well, you make good points.
Hey, Lindsay.
Yes.
Wrestling with faith, wrestling with questions, is something that the church has not done well. Especially some of the fundamental sides of the church. They demand belief and adherence to their particular brand of Christianity. And you and I have both been a part of churches and organizations that have done that. And if you don't fall in line with their stuff, you are of no use to them.
Yeah.
That mindset, that brand of Christianity does more damage, hurts more ministry, breaks more than anything else. That young adult program.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember bits and pieces that they said in what was your second year with that program? precautionary tale they may have used about 2 former students who were getting married and the pariahs that they were, the outcasts that they were.
Yeah.
How'd that make you feel?
Hold on, let me think of the right word. Uncomfortable? Angry? Not at you.
But it was me and my wife that were that couple.
I know.
I know you know.
Oh.
That hurt. A lot.
Yeah.
Melinda and I, last week was the 15-year mark for us being engaged. And you know what? I've got a pretty good marriage. I haven't been the precautionary tale that they expected. And not because of them. The church will fail. It will hurt people. It's unfortunate. And it sucks when you're on the other side of it. But at the same time, Christ is there. He heals the wounds. He heals the church. And he mends and heals those relationships.
Yeah.
I don't think we're done talking about this.
Yeah.
I think you're going to edit this week and be like, oh, wait!
No. Yeah.
Wait a minute! When you edit and we have these kind of conversations, you text me like 5 times.
Yeah, because I'm listening, I'm like,
Yeah. It's okay.
Or I'm cringing because I'm an idiot.
That's okay. Well, here's the thing. So, there's another one of my former students who had talked about possibly coming on, and we had talked about October, and that is coming up quickly. In fact, this episode will be out in October.
What's this student's spin?
She's moved away from the church and from faith.
Mm-hmm.
She has some questions, and yeah. So I think it's a good time to have some of these conversations. And to have them as best as we can in grace. Yes, you and I will yell at each other sometimes. That's okay. We're still friends at the end of the day. That doesn't change.
Yeah.
And that's okay. But my mother-in-law is here. We're going and doing a thing today. I gotta get moving.
All right. It's been real.
It's been real.
I'll talk to you soon.
I want to make a joke about that.
Has it? Is this a simulation?
Matrix theory. All right.
See you later.
Yes, it's been good. We'll see you, Lindsay.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening to the 42 podcast. Please take a moment to like and subscribe. And if you want to join in on the conversation, you can find us on Facebook and Twitter to add your voice to the conversation. Thank you.